All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 33
Wow.
of Truth or Trend, the holistic breakdown,
Mhm.
where Dr. Vrzal and I tackle these issues where people are coming to us saying, hey, man, is this just marketing? Is this something I should do? Should I change my whole life and do it this way? Or is it a bunch of bunk? Yeah, we are doing our best to help people look at things from a different perspective and make up your own mind, right? We'll tell you what our
Right.
minds are, but we're not going to, we don't want to tell you what to think, but we want to tell you maybe how to think or help you how to think
Love
overall.
that.
Today, we've got a really cool topic that came to us. There was a book that Dr. V presented to me about Save Your Hearing Now, revolutionary program that can prevent and may even reverse hearing
Mm.
loss. That's huge, right? That's
It's
huge.
huge.
And
Right.
that's what we got to figure out. Is this crazy? Is this possible? And we have a lot of very fun data that we're going to run through with all of you guys today. Because here's the thing, Dr. V, I say this to people all the time when somebody comes in our office and they've accepted this reality. They say, oh, my doctors, everybody's told me there's nothing you can do. You can never do anything about this. And I
Mm.
always just gently, lovingly say, look, there's nothing they can do about it, right? They've
Mhm.
reached the end of their knowledge. That's it. That doesn't mean it's your limitations because it's their limitations. And so
Right.
hopefully that's what we're going to instill in everybody today is that it doesn't matter what the condition is. There's
Right.
always something you can do to improve your health. Would you agree?
100%. And I mean, the medical model is hearing aids. That's pretty much all there is out there, right?
Right.
I've talked to a
Implants.
couple of ENTs about it, trying to stimulate their buck their system a little bit. And they go into this whole dissertation about how wonderful hearing aids and how they save people's lives, you know?
Right, right. Well, and it is. There's value to it, right? And it's something that, it's funny. A lot of people are resistant to doing because they feel like it's confirmation of their aging, right? They're starting to have
Mhm.
emotional resistance to those. It'd be so
Right.
great if they knew that there are these things that you could potentially be doing out there to actually help restore your hearing.
Right.
I think the hard part about this, quite honestly, Dr. B, is there's so many variables that go into it. For someone to truly address all the variables needed to be able to help improve your hearing, it would actually take a lot of concerted effort, a lot of very specific effort. Would you?
Right.
Yeah.
I would agree in that. I mean, for you and I, for me clinically, it's trying to figure out what the most important variable is for people. We're going to go through potentially 10 different supplements that this guy lays out, appropriately laid out. But for me, it's take of those 10, what parallels other health issues in your life. And so as you're listening or reading the transcripts, since listening might be an issue to today's
Wow.
episode.
True, true. Okay. That's
I mean, funny side. I mean, his book was not available in the Audible version.
well, that makes sense.
Right, right. Because I listened to most of my books, and I wasn't able to do that with this one, so I had to sit down and read it during a plane ride. But yeah, as you're listening to this and look for other aspects that would be related. As we talk about B vitamins, do you have any cardiovascular issues or energy issues? And maybe complex or B vitamins are the way to go. If you have oxidation and skin issues or things like that. As we go through each individual nutrient, we'll try to throw some other triggers to say, yeah, this is the one nutrient maybe you should be looking at, and try to tie it together for you. So stay tuned, buckle your seatbelt, turn up your hearing aids.
There you go. Tune in. Get ready. Yeah. Sharpen your eyesight to read the transcript. Uh,
Right.
so yeah,
Which
so
is
what
going to be the
Dr.
same subject, really. I mean,
Yeah,
what we
that's
talk about to
true.
heal your hearing is really about the same as what, eyesight is.
That's a great point. And that's what I always say. Just imagine all the other things in your body that are going to heal if you can get, the nutrients to help your hearing, the rest of your body is getting all kinds of benefit.
Well, I
So
think that's part of what piqued your interest about doing this as an episode when I told you that I see this book as kind of where vision was 10 years ago. 10
yeah,
years ago, there was like, oh, eyesight is just what you need to do. But now practically every optometrist is selling, well, they're cheesy. I mean, they're kind of lame vitamins, but they're selling antioxidants to help people's eyes. And
yeah,
so they're looking at, cataracts being an oxidation issue, vision as an adrenal issue. Well, they're not looking at vision as an adrenal issue, but they're doing vitamins to try to help protect eyes. And I see hearing is starting to follow suit now.
mm.
Mhm.
You know what? All right. So now we gotta do an episode on that because there's a lot that we can unpack about the eyesight, but it's going to be a lot of crossover, is what you're saying.
Totally. Yes.
So,
Yes.
so what Dr. B and I did is we read this book. We wrote down all the nutrients that he discusses in the book, and we're just going to go through them a little bit one by one with you guys, so we can kind of review why or why not. Right? Let's start with
And empower you to change
yeah,
and
exactly.
grow and be your best.
So he throws magnesium at the top, right? And
Right.
right away, when I think of magnesium, I think of this article that I found years ago. This was in 2000, or this is 1994. They were taking
Mm.
oral magnesium to reduce permanent hearing loss induced by noise exposure. And so this was in the Israeli army that they were doing this before they were firing their weapons. And really very encouraging, but they were doing 167 milligrams of magnesium aspartate uh, versus sodium aspartate, right? So let's just break
Mhm.
that down for a second, right? Obviously, magnesium has some need. And what percentage would you say of the people you see are low in magnesium in general?
Yeah, high, very high percentage. And magnesium, talking about throwing other pearls in with it, magnesium is also going to help from a tinnitus perspective. So if you have hearing loss and tinnitus, or anxiety, these are all other potential signs that magnesium could be a good thing for you. Magnesium goes along with that depolarization that we were talking about a little bit offline before we started the
Break,
camera.
break
So.
that down for people listening. Depolarization. What do you mean by that when you say
So
that?
it means that a nerve cell is firing more easily than it should, and so calcium goes across that channel to tell one nerve for one nerve to communicate to the next nerve. And so things like excitotoxins, that's concussions, glutamate causes that to just cause those nerves to fire when they shouldn't, and that's an excitotoxin means it excites that nerve cell to the point of death. And so if that's constantly firing, uh, and it basically doesn't restore or rebuild, then the nerve cell can die. So tinnitus, unfortunately, is a bit of that issue. We may be talking about that. We were going to say save this for another subject, but here we are starting right into it.
No, we're
But
gonna
that's
we're gonna cover tinnitus today too. We're gonna have to, right? So,
yeah, now
yeah,
we are,
huge
huh?
issue, and a lot of people who need some help with that. So hopefully, we'll give you guys some direction or some
Right,
ideas that maybe you didn't think about before that can help you with that. And magnesium
right.
is one I wouldn't have necessarily thought about for tinnitus necessarily.
Right. And so that goes along with a lot of what Michael talks about in that this Save Your Hearing Now book is the loud noises. And I mean, truth be told, that's where I fall short. I like to crank up, fast-paced, heavy song to help me get up the hill faster on my bike, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or, if I'm trying to, get inspired before I walk into the office, I've got a $12,000 stereo in my car to make sure that I can get into the mood, and so when I read this book, I got an ohm meter to look at, he talks about, we start getting over 30 ohms, and 30 ohms is basically a conversation,
Wow. Okay.
conversation kind of decibel, not ohm meter, sorry, decibel meter. And, 30 decibels is about a conversation. He says getting above that is we're starting to put damage, potentially risk damage on our hearing.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so that stereo, I just talked about it. So I tested to see what my stereo would do. 110 decibels is the hair standing up on the head, and skin's almost vibrating. That's concert. And then we had the tinnitus, and we actually kind of kind of the hair cells in the ear kind of lay down like a burnt forest from if we
Right.
disrupt them that much. And so that's what a lot of this is about, is to try to help rebuild, heal those up, so that we have those fibers to tell the body that there's sound going on ultimately.
Yeah, and the magnesium was shown to protect that from happening, right? From
Right.
the trees from falling down.
That's
So
right. That's how we got on that subject, wasn't
yeah.
it?
Well, and so my biggest takeaway for this is anytime you're going to a concert or anytime you're going to the firing range, right? Or anytime you're going somewhere where you're going to be exposed to some level of that, it'd be really important to load up on some magnesium. Take a hand, 4 or 5 easy mag is what I would do.
Right.
For that. And I say easy mag because we put a list down here of potential actual protocol of products that we use because that also includes the quercetin. And a lot of people think about this quercetin as something you have to take independent, but it's really abundant in buckwheat. So I just want to remind everybody that when you're doing that easy mag, you're getting both the magnesium and the quercetin right there, which is, a twofer. That's what we want.
Right. God's pretty smart in the way he designed foods, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And
So let's talk about how he talks about folic acid next, right? Or B9, or maybe we should just cover all the vitamin B right away, Dr. B. So,
Yeah, I think kind of just from a front end perspective, his favorite is the ALA and ALC, just because he's, I mean, those are really his one and two because he did his own research on that and he actually
ALA being
found
your alpha lipoic acid and ALC being your acetyl L-carnitine.
acetyl L-carnitine. So in acetyl L-carnitine was his number two favorite subject supplement. He found that to actually restore the lows, and so that was my big old takeaway that he actually did studies where he gave acetyl L-carnitine or carnitine and was able to restore people's ability to hear the low frequencies. And
Wow.
then he used alpha lipoic acid, ALA, and was able to restore the high frequencies, which is often where people lose. So I think those really should be our front end subjects. And you've got some supplements there that in the SP line that could potentially help. Each of those in and of themselves is a subject because a lot of that alpha lipoic acid the body should be making on its own. So why isn't the body producing it on its own is really a big subject. But I think this is, for me, that was a massive takeaway in this book that he was actually able to demonstrate high frequency and low frequency recovery through nutrition, which is just that's a massive, like
Huge.
buckle
That's
your
just,
seatbelt.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
like a 6 minute mile revelation, right? That it's
Right. Great,
possible
great example.
for you to be able
Yeah.
to do it. But let's
hmm
let's break down a little bit the ALA and the ALSE. I like what you said here. Why isn't the body making its own ALA, right?
Right, right.
And of course, there's a mitochondrial component to this. And we hear a lot of people talk about mitochondrial health. I
hmm
just actually created a video about power of HIIT exercise and just weight training to help improve mitochondrial health. So
Right.
is that the issue? Is that why they need to supplement ALA is because their mitochondria are getting tired and just beat up, or what would you say?
Right. So there's a lot of things that could inhibit ALA or mitochondrial function as a whole. And a lot of what the book is, especially nutritionally, what he's talking about in the book is function of mitochondria, because I mean that's at the heart of a lot of this. And that's a I'm listening to a 13-hour book on mitochondria right now. It's pretty boring, but
That's what you do
but
for fun. I'm
that's
in
what I
the
do for
sitting around
fun.
reading a book about mitochondria.
Lifetimes of Dr. V.
Right?
So yeah, things like toxic metals can inhibit the mitochondria and
Mm,
compromise our ability to make ALA. As you mentioned offline again, that I guess we should start the camera rolling immediately because they
right.
keep talking about offline. But good fats, having those good fats, and he talks about lecithin, having that available to help the mitochondria function. Thyroid hormone, again, thyroid hormone, the T4 to T3 is another, toxins inhibit T4 to conversion to T3, but that also sparks the mitochondria to function. So
Mm,
all these little things, pantothenic acid, B5 that he talks about in here, that should be talked about in there, helps that again helps the mitochondria function. So all these things activate, if you will, alpha lipoic acid, which is going to allow us to hear the higher frequencies when
wow.
no, I was going to say when your wife is squawking at you, but
Wow. Just cut out like, yeah, half of our
whoops.
listening audience there.
No, I mean, trying to think of an example of a high pitch, your bike squeaking. Let's go there.
Okay. I did. So
Mhm.
let me ask you this. Because there are so many obstacles potentially to your body being able to make its own ALA, do you find yourself in some circumstances suggesting people take LA short term until you can figure out the heavy metal toxicity and get all the other things going to get the producing their own?
Right. And sometimes it might be necessary, right, to prime the pump to start getting
Right.
that out of the mitochondria. I mean, mitochondria regenerate, so we do want to do that. And mitochondria are basically bacteria. If they're little bacteria that produce energy for us, they have value. So antibiotics can compromise mitochondria,
Oh,
can compromise
yeah.
their function. So there's a whole nother subject, right? But so keep that intestinal bacterial health proper, which opens the door to the next discussion that you started to talk about with the B vitamins.
Mm,
The
yeah.
the gut biota is a lot of our production of the B vitamins, especially B12 is known. I've seen that is in the literature of
Yep.
lactobacillus organisms in the gut, is what activates and makes our methylcobalamin to then produce energy to facilitate this methylation pathway, which a lot of these nutrients are talking about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's this whole cyclical thing that goes on that we need to listen to our bodies and recognize where it's breaking down for longevity, for improved continued hearing,
Mm.
for visual acuity. I mean, all this stuff plays in, it's all anti-aging ultimately, which is one of your favorite subjects.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. And that's what
Mhm.
that's my argument always is that aging is accelerated just because we're missing all of these essential chemistries so much that the body just
Mhm.
breaking down. But okay, so
Right.
B12 up here, deficiency has been linked to hearing loss and tinnitus, and that we're kind of in agreement on, obviously, right? And
Right. Right.
CoQ10 also supporting mitochondrial function and energy in the auditory cells. So
And so one of the most common things to compromise CoQ10 is
that
statins, right?
medications, right?
So
Exactly.
correct the liver,
Mhm.
fix the hormone issue that's causing cholesterol to go up, get rid of those statins that cause joint pains and so on. Carry
But if
on.
we're building a protocol with nutrition, this B Vitality with CoQ10 from Standard Process might be an awesome addition to that because of the full spectrum of the Bs, all the Bs are talking about, plus the CoQ10 to help energize the mitochondria. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
100%. And that product was fairly well developed for with mitochondria in mind.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
Got some cordyceps in there, some mushrooms, right? Hey, speaking
Yeah.
of, let's talk about that. He does talk about medicinal mushrooms. For
Mhm.
example, lion's mane. He does talk
There
about.
you go.
And I do want to share this really cool research that we discovered when we looked into this, the effects
Mhm.
of lion's mane mushrooms on elderly hearing impaired patients. A double-blinded, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trial. Pure tone audiometry was improved. Speech recognition was ameliorated with this. So, and this, it's interesting that it says it was more effective in patients over the age of 65 than those under 65. So that just means it was more dramatic, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, makes
But
sense, right?
this is pretty awesome, right? I would say that this is some
100%.
encouraging. If we only had
Right.
a good source of lion's mane to give everybody, that
Go ahead and
would,
throw your shameless promo in there.
yeah.
Show them your product.
Well, there's a reason that I like lion's
It
mane
is.
mushroom so much, and that
It
we
is. It
yeah
is a
we
great
created that
Yeah.
product. Okay, so
Might as
yeah,
well
so
put a slide up of your lion's mane product
you
there.
know what? Here it is. Great Minds Mushrooms is on that
There you go.
protocol. Lion's
All
mane
right.
with the ergothioneine would
Mhm.
be really helpful. And here's the other thing that I want to mention about that is this ergothioneine. He talks a lot about oxidative stress, right? A lot
Mhm.
of what he's talking about up here, this N-acetylcysteine,
Mhm.
glutathione, he's trying to
Right.
make sure that the body is getting, managing the oxidative stress, potentially
Yes.
being caused by heavy metals and whatever else is going on in there.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
ergothioneine is superior actually to glutathione in many ways because you don't have to have all of this other chemistry to get in there. You take the ergothioneine and you're getting a massive benefit with oxidative stress. So that's another reason why I would shamelessly plug mushrooms.
It's not shameless. It's because you care about us and you
It's
want us to
right.
have the right product,
It's the truth, right?
right
That we're
nutrients.
throwing
It
out
is
there, right?
truth.
It's not just a trend. Lion's
Right.
mane mushrooms, yeah, are not.
And so glutathione's a perfect example of this whole cyclical aspect of what's going on. You can't take glutathione as a product physically because it breaks down in the stomach and it's not going to do what we need, the free radical quenching and so on. So we need to facilitate that pathway in the body to allow it to function. And what do you know? The products, the nutrients to help make it, zinc, anti-inflammatory or antioxidants, all the stuff that we talk about, Conjuplex is a nutrient, is a supplement that'll help the body make glutathione, which is our bulletproof vest for the immune system. It kind of launches, but again, we can't take it orally. We need to help the body produce it, and
Right.
so that's a much better, more effective. So I mean, really, it's there's a lot of redundancy really when you look at the nutrients that he's talking about in there, and he does talk about zinc as one of his favorite subjects or
Yep, go ahead.
supplements because it's very prominent. It's most relevant in the inner ear. And so is one of the main nutrients to drive that P450 pathway, which is free radical damage. That's the first phase of detoxification where we actually intentionally oxidize products to make them ready for detoxification.
Hmm.
So that's very zinc dependent. And zinc is deficient in our foods. It gets leached under stress, gets leached by sugar. So, I mean, that is the most common nutrient deficiency I see. You were asking about prevalence of magnesium. I think
Yeah.
zinc is higher deficiency per capita than magnesium. They're both massive,
Yeah.
nearing the 100% mark, you know.
I would totally agree
Mm,
with you. I mean, I test everybody when they come in with a zinc taste test, and
is that right?
we want to make sure that they're retesting every 90 days. It's not just, I don't
Mm.
want your zinc to be good today. I want it to be good for the rest of your life for this reason right here.
Right, right, right.
So my favorite
Fortunately,
zinc,
zinc did get popularized with COVID because,
right?
zinc is very relevant to help fight viruses or gets leached in viral overload, especially things like COVID. So then people lose their sense of smell or taste. And so that's a overt symptom of zinc deficiency. So take zinc so that your food can taste good. So you'll have better, better self-discipline as well, because you can enjoy it properly instead of having to eat a bunch of garbage to try to get some enjoyment out of the food.
Absolutely. And my favorite foods for zinc are going to be like pumpkin seeds and oysters and pecans, those types of things. But if I'm going to supplement, my favorite is actually Neuroplex for those of you who use standard process out there.
Okay.
Excellent source
Hmm.
of, and then you get the extra additional B vitamins. So if I was building a protocol to protect hearing, I would probably include some Neuroplex in there for everybody.
Right. So you're going to protect the brain with that, right? Which is, potentially, ultimately what we're talking about with hearing, right? It's all nervous system.
Mhm.
So yeah, great concept, great idea. And you're
Can
right
we
there with
pop
the
down to
Prody
this
food.
one real quick, though?
Yeah,
I want to
hit
talk
it,
about protofood for a reason. Because
please.
everything we just talked about, all of these things are dependent on the essential amino acids. And I honestly think if we're trying to get glutathione, just bear with me now, okay? So we take methionine, and after a few chemical reactions, we get homocysteine, right?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Homocysteine is what we need to go down to make glutathione.
Okay.
If that makes
Mhm.
sense. But here's the funny thing that I always want to remind people: if we have enough of all the other chemistry, the body can recycle that homocysteine back into more methionine, right? Two
Mhm.
different ways. But that requires a lot of chemistry. So in my
Mhm.
mind, I'm always thinking, well, why don't we just make sure the body has enough methionine so it doesn't have to use all this chemistry to keep recycling homocysteine back up to methionine?
Right.
Instead, we
Right.
can take that homocysteine, get it down to glutathione, right? That makes a lot more sense to me. So I think a lot of that is just making sure you have enough methionine, and that's why I love protofood for those reasons.
For sure. So much to unpack there. And
Yeah,
if if we're not breaking down the homocysteine properly, then we got massive cardiovascular risk because that is the plaquer for the arteries. When that homocysteine is not breaking down, that's going to manifest as the little red dots, the petechiae, the cherry angioma on the body. Often they're going to be in the sternal area first. You start seeing those grow or brew, if you will, on the body. That's signs you're not breaking homocysteine down, and you're flirting with cardiovascular risk.
right.
So there's that from what you just talked about. And then the other aspect, the nice thing about Proti food is it's a heat labile amino acids that are in that product. So that means if you're eating mostly heated or prepared protein foods, potentially you're running a high risk of damaging or compromising those, arginine and lysine, the amino acids that, think cold sores, right?
Right.
Arginine and lysine are two primary amino acids for growth hormone to help us heal and restore as we sleep. And so if we don't have those, then we're not going to have the, restore, rebuild as we sleep. This opens up the whole subject of melatonin and
Yeah,
healing the
sure.
brain. I think we've talked about that.
Well, I mean, when you
So
start getting into amino acids, it's everything, right? It's everything.
yeah,
So
right. All the neurotransmitters and on and on and on. So, but basically, just again, the value of something like protein food is the fact that those are some amino acids that you may not be getting, even if you're eating steak and chicken and turkey and fish and
right, right.
all of that. Mm.
Well said, sir.
Mm.
Okay, should we move on to see what else he's got on? Okay,
Right.
we're trying to get
What
through
other
this before you have
tangent?
to
What
get to
other
the
tangent are we going to go on?
Let's see. We covered the zinc, the B, the glutathione, all of these. Let's talk about folic acid and B9, right? Let's talk about that versus like a whole food version of it. That's why I put down here whole food folate, which I would
Right.
call this a superior B9. You want to just give
Yeah.
a couple of brief little take on.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, for people, a lot of SP practitioners that are listening, I mean, that's a brand new product, and so I muscle test the difference between what's the difference between that and folic acid B12.
Yep.
I do find them to test somewhat differently. Um, like you said, the whole food folate is a fabulous product. It actually tastes pretty good, I think. I like to chew them up. I chew
Okay.
all my tablets really, but that
Yeah.
one actually tastes like it tastes like I feel like I'm getting healthy when I chew that one up.
You breathed in a whole nutrition store, right? When you
Right, right. So, I mean, if we're going to talk about folate, and as you mentioned, B9, we need to talk about, how we ended up here, with that whole folic acid, con almost conspiracy on methylation, and the MTHFR gene. So many patients come into my office. I have the MTHFR gene, tail between the legs. Oh, I'm duped, and really what that MTHFR gene means is you need to be more diligent about not taking garbage folic acid supplements, that are the inactive form of folic acid, because that's more stress on the liver. You eat, because when I first started testing all this, I'm like, well, if they have this gene glitch, why doesn't folic acid B12 from standard process, or why don't vegetables compromise these people? I mean, the way the MTHFR gene was pitched originally, you would think that people would die of cancer if they ate vegetables,
right,
And so then I came across a paper that, demonstrated that vegetables didn't seem to compromise that pathway. And it's like, well, duh, that we went through this whole season of life where, people were realized that they were processing the folic acid or folate out of grains, and people were having, neurologic problems by doing that. So then they spray that folic acid junk back into your breads and grains and starches that they processed out, and then that was compromising liver. So ultimately, I mean, that's kind of my little soapbox on the whole folic acid folate debate
dig it.
in protecting life.
Yeah.
So go ahead and talk about the whole food folate there.
No, I'm right there with you 100%. I mean, anytime that we try to get smarter than Mother Nature, we get in trouble. And I love
Yeah.
that this gives you the whole food version of it, but also gives you whole food B12. And again, I'm finding it to be superior to any other methylated product, right? I get worried about people taking a methylated B for too long because hypermethylation is a problem. We just talked about
Mm,
this acetyl L-carnitine being something that needs acetylation, right? But if you're
mhm.
over methylating, you're not acetylating, right? That's
Right. Mhm.
imbalance that you create there. You could really jack up your acetylation. Did you know that? I mean, come on.
Right.
Nobody wants a jacked up
And
acetylation.
right. And so symptoms of high acetylation is anxiety, panic attacks. So
Right,
you want to sign up for that?
right,
It's kind of potentially what you're doing, taking a synthetic supplement like that. Mhm.
right. We won't get into all the details of the mechanisms of why. We can do that another time, but it
Mhm.
definitely does create high neurotransmitter situations, higher than healthy levels, I would say.
Right.
Well,
Right.
while we
Right.
still have a little bit of time left, though, I do want to jump on one last thing here. This ginkgo biloba,
Oh yeah.
right? Not just for the inner blood ear flow or the blood flow, but the tinnitus, right? This was a
Hmm.
cool little study that we found talking about it. A much quoted 2001 study said that it wasn't effective, but the problem with that study is the dose was 150 milligrams daily, where this is stating that the correct dose is 240 milligrams twice a day, and more than 2 dozen studies show the power of ginkgo to help with tinnitus, which is something that so many people have asked about is what do we do about tinnitus? So
Right. So that helps with the circulatory aspect of tinnitus. Again, offline we talked about, is it tinnitus a neurologic issue or is it a circulatory issue? So the ginkgo's the shining star. Years ago, a gentleman was coming in for his first visit in my office. He's filling out paperwork at the front desk, and he started to crack up. I'm like, "What's so funny? You're doing intake paperwork." He's like laughing. He's like, he's trying to fill out the section of what supplements he's on. He's like, "What's that herb I'm taking for my memory?"
that's the
So
problem with it. You got to
we
remember
put
to
our
take
heads
it.
we put our heads together and realized it was supposed to be ginkgo that he was taking thought he was taking for his memory.
Oh man.
But
Yeah,
ginkgo's so brilliant for circulatory issues and getting that, that microcirculation, getting all the blood flow to those little aspects of little crevices, if you will, in the brain. Hearing
exactly.
is an aspect with that. So
That's why
so
I
for
love,
sure.
I would put go to cola complex on this protocol for myself personally.
Because
Because
that has your resveratrol in there.
yeah, because the grape seed is in there, so you get the resveratrol and the ginkgo, and you just talked about microvascular circulation. I don't know
Mhm.
hardly anything that's going to be better than go to cola at helping with microvascular circulation.
Okay, nice.
And I'm sure
So
there's
so with
things.
Resveratrol. So can't we just drink a couple bottles of wine every night to get all that resveratrol?
Wash it down with a full glass of glyphosate. Be my guest, my friend.
There we go. Yeah, actually, yeah. Now that brought it up, on unfortunately, California got blown for even organic wines have glyphosate in them. So if you are a wino, um,
That's the third time I've
it,
heard that term this week, Dr.
oh
V. A
yeah,
wino. Yep.
and choose wines that don't have glyphosate, typically more likely in European wines and some of
Yep.
that sort of stuff.
Well, and those
So,
are still not perfect. In fact, what I'm suggesting people do is get a filter of some sort. Even
mm,
a water filter with the carbon filter in there can help to get rid of some of that glyphosate. So either,
so you put wine through a water filter.
why not? Why not?
Wow,
Get rid of the
that's a great concept. How does it change the taste of the wine?
Of course it does. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Glyphosate free tasting now.
Yeah, yeah, really, huh? That's interesting concept. I'm gonna have to play with that. Thank you.
Of course, of
Mm.
course, of course. So I'm trying to find ways to reduce the fire that people are, or the fuel that people are pouring on their fires, and that glyphosate's obviously a big one. We've talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
right, right, right.
I think we covered the whole protocol. I think we got it,
Okay,
right?
lecithin. Did we cover lecithin?
Oh, no, we did not. And we did not cover the Cataplex ACP that I put on there for the vitamins A and C to help with oxidative stress as well. So why don't you talk about lecithin a little bit?
Lecithin is fat emulsifier, helps the gallbladder work. Gallbladder gets compromised with the glyphosate, which is uh, unfortunately prevalent in our diets. It's also for that, well, helps us make acetylcholine, that memory neurotransmitter.
Right?
Acetylcholine helps us recall and that sort of stuff. So lecithin's it's a fat emulsifier, and we need that to digest those healthy fats, um,
Mhm.
which is to make then the building blocks for hormones and on, anti-inflammatory and on and on and on. So lecithin is a great thing to get in. The eggs have lecithin if they're cooked soft, so that's a value if you're eating healthy eggs, a good benefit. And you had something else you wanted to add on that?
No, well, I mean, I didn't put soybean lecithin on here, but I'm going to have to update this protocol to probably include one of those in there for that reason, for the lecithin, just to make sure it's all in
Right.
this protocol.
Okay. And then the ACP you talked about, free radical damage is a lot of most of what this book is all about, and protecting hearing. Um, that if we are short of antioxidants, we're going to be altitude sensitive.
Mm.
So if you're, doing athletic events, at altitude, or you tend to get headaches when you go to altitude. I did a hike up Mount Whitney's, highest mountain in the contiguous U.S. And actually was on the way up. A couple of guys I was hiking with started to pop their aspirin. Oh, I'm starting to get a headache. I'm like, no, 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 don't do that. Put Cataplex ACP on their tongue, and immediately the headaches would go away. We were chewing on ACP all the way up the mountain. Back on the way down, there was a gal literally going into convulsions on the side of the trail, kind of, well, literally, having full on altitude sickness. I put 5 ACP on her tongue. She stood up and finished the hike with us. And,
Wow.
it was pretty immediate, pretty amazing. So that Cataplex ACP is really a value in altitude sickness kind of stuff. And again, altitude sickness is a sign potentially that you're flirting with the free radical damage. You're basically oxidizing, you're accelerating the aging process.
Wow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I would, of course, we always think of Cataplex E2 for elevation, right? For the oxygen,
Right,
being able to
right.
get muscle, but I'm going to definitely carry some ACP and probably some lion's mane mushrooms to help with oxidative stress too. I mean, that just might be me.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
sweet,
that one.
man. Thanks for finding this book for us. I think there's a lot of people out
Awesome.
there concerned about this. I think there's more you can do, honestly. This is just the basics that we went through tonight.
Hmm.
I know that there are some great docs out there in California that I used to work with who have structural ways to help with tinnitus as well, right?
Mm.
This can sometimes be a stuck ileocecal valve, could cause some ringing as well.
Okay.
Adrenal
Mm.
insufficiency can be a big issue for tinnitus. Uh,
Adrenal's where I typically go. Yes.
yeah, and I think you covered pretty much everything in your book on tinnitus then in this call too, right?
Nice. Yeah. Hmm.
Look, there you go, guys. There it is. If you have any questions, feedback, please leave us comments below. Let us know what we missed, or if you have some like amazing thing that we didn't talk about that's superior for helping with tinnitus or hearing loss. Of course, we want to know about it, right? Because we want to make it
Please.
with everybody. So please do put that down there. We've got a lot more exciting topics coming up in the future, but thanks for listening, and hopefully we'll hear more from you guys soon.
So,
Have a good one.
mhm.